Then came a call from Mr. Matthew was suing him for $50,000 he had paid the new contractor to complete the roof Danny had abandoned. "I can't do this," Danny told Mr. Matthews. "I'm sorry, but I have to walk away from this project." Mr. Matthews needed his roof done, hired another contractor, and ended up paying $100,000 to get the job finished. Hey guys, it's Karalynn and welcome back to the podcast. Today is another chapter in Trust Your Gut, my cheap version of Audible. All of the chapters of this book I've read into the podcast. And so today we're on chapter 9, which is Plan for the Unexpected. So, all right. It was a perfect fall day in 2019 when Danny, a roofer who had been in business for a few years, landed a big project. It wasn't just any project. It was a full roof replacement for a sprawling suburban home owned by a man named Joe Matthews. Mr. Matthews was a friendly guy and everything seemed to be lined up perfectly. The contract was signed and sealed. Danny left pretty confident about the job. But roofing isn't always a straightforward business, and Danny had a packed schedule. By the time he could fit Mr. Matthews' project roof in his lineup, it was early 21, and things had changed a lot. For starters, the cost of materials, shingles, plywood, and nails had jumped 30% since the contract was signed. On top of that, there was a labor shortage. The pandemic had slowed down work everywhere, and Danny couldn't find enough guys to get the project off the ground. His usual crews were booked or unavailable, and every attempt to hire new workers hit a dead end. This put Danny in a tight spot. With price increases and no crew to help him, he realized finishing this job under the original terms wasn't just difficult, it was impossible. After crunching the numbers, Danny came to the conclusion that he would be losing money, possibly tens of thousands of dollars, if he went ahead with the job. So he made the decision he thought was for the best for his business and walked away. "I can't do this," Danny told Mr. Matthews. "I'm sorry, but I have to walk away from this project." Mr. Matthews needed his roof done, hired another contractor, and ended up paying $100,000 to get the job finished. Months passed, and Danny moved on, trying to line up work that made financial sense. But then came a call from Mr. Matthew was suing him for $50,000 he had paid the new contractor to complete the roof Danny had abandoned. That's when Danny called me panicked, looking for advice. "I'm getting sued. I don't know what to do," he said. "Take a deep breath, Danny," I said. "Do you have a clause in your contract for price escalation or delays? Something to the project, something to protect you from all these changes that happened?" There was silence on the other end of the line. "No, I didn't have that," Danny admitted. And there it was. Without a crucial provision, there wasn't much I could do. I gave him a few pointers. Maybe he could try to negotiate or settle. But the truth was Mr. Matthews had legal standing and Danny didn't have a leg to stand on. Freaked out, Danny didn't do anything and ignored the lawsuit. Predictably, Mr. Matthews got a default judgment against Danny, and the lawsuit sank him, and he had to close his business. Remember chapter 6? This is exactly why we don't ignore lawsuits. It's a surefire way to lose before even starting a fight. If Danny had included a simple clause in his contract stating that he wasn't responsible for price increases or labor shortages beyond his control, he would have turned out completely different. The provisions would have shifted the burden to Mr. Matthews when the cost of materials skyrocketed and the workers were impossible to find. Danny could have gone to Mr. Matthews and said, "Hey, look, I need to charge more, or we can cancel the contract." If Mr. Matthews had agreed to pay extra cost, Danny could have kept the job. If he refused, Danny could have walked away without facing a lawsuit and still had his business today. Even if Mr. Matthews had tried to sue Danny could have pointed to the contract and said, "I warned you this might happen and you didn't want to pay more, so that's on you." Because Danny didn't have that clause, he didn't have that protection, and in the end it cost him everything. It's a harsh lesson, but a critical one. When you're dealing with contracts, always plan for the unexpected. You might think the future looks predictable, even when you sign the deal, but the truth is things can change fast. And if you're not prepared, those changes can be devastating. The unfortunate truth is that most residential contracts don't account for unexpected circumstances like skyrocketing material prices, labor shortages, or weather delays. If you haven't prepared for these surprises, you could be left footing the bill, or worse, in breach of contract. The solution is simple. Include a provision in your contract that allows for adjustments when unforeseen events happen. This chapter will show you exactly how to do that and why it's essential for protecting your business. How do you plan for the unexpected? As a contractor, you know the drill. The price you quote and the timeline you promise are based on the reality of the moment, but reality can change fast. Let's rewind to 2008. Back then, steel prices shot through the roof, and many contractors found themselves scrambling because their contracts didn't include a provision for price increases. Some contractor added these clauses in the aftermath, but as time passed, even the most seasoned professional forgot about the pain. Now, flash forward to 2020, when we saw history repeat itself during a pandemic. The prices of materials soared, and many contractors ended up eating those costs because their contracts didn't include language to protect them. That is why it's important to include language that gives you the ability to pass the unexpected cost, like increased materials, onto the homeowner, and to extend the project timeline when delays are beyond your control. It's your safety net, ensuring that you're not the only one paying out of pocket when things change. This provision essentially helps you to cover your ass for things that are simply out of your control. You don't want to get stuck paying for extra expenses, and this clause can make sure that you don't have to. The key is to include language that clearly states any additional costs resulting from unforeseen circumstances will be covered by the homeowner and not you. What makes this provision so important is it prepares you for anything. While a pandemic is a once-in-a-generational event, unexpected changes happen all the time. You can't predict when a hurricane will delay shipments, when labor will be impossible to find, or when a power outage will shut down your work site. But you can prepare for those possibilities by making sure your contract allows for those adjustments. What should the provision include? When crafting this provision, think of all the expected events that could impact your project. Here are a few you'll want to account for. Price increases. The cost of materials can fluctuate dramatically, whether it's lumber, steel, or even appliances. If you don't have a clause allowing you to adjust for the total contract price based on material costs at the time of purchase, you might find yourself in a position where your profit margin disappears. Weather delays. If rain, freezing temperatures, or other weather-related events prevent you from working, the project timeline should allow for that, and the contract should clearly state that delays caused by weather will result in extension of the completion date. Labor shortages. Finding qualified work is becoming harder and harder in many regions. If you're facing delays because you can't find enough labor, this provision gives you more time to complete the project without a penalty. Health-related delays. COVID-19 shone a spotlight on how illness can halt a project. If your team gets sick and work stops, your contract should have a provision that allows extra time for you to get back on track. Power outages. Whether due to the weather or scheduled by utility companies, power outages can throw a wrench in your timeline. Ensure the provision includes these scenarios so you won't get penalized when the lights go out. Disasters. Unexpected events like flooding, tornadoes, or even a pipe bursting, like we talked about in the last chapter, can bring work to a halt. This provision should allow for extra time in case of these disasters so you're not held responsible for the delays out of your control. These specific provisions cover many common scenarios, but no one can anticipate every possible curveball. That's why it's essential to include a general escape clause, Chapter 6, as a safety net. This clause ensures that if something unexpected arises that isn't explicitly listed, you're still protected to have the flexibility to address the situation without a penalty. Protecting the timeline. This provision isn't just about protecting your wallet, it's also about protecting the project schedule. If shipments are delayed or workers are out sick, your project will take longer. Having this clause in place means you can extend the timeline without putting yourself at risk of breaching the contract. For example, during the pandemic, windows took up to 8 weeks to arrive, compared to the usual 2 to 3 weeks. With this provision, you can communicate with the homeowner. The fridge you choose will take 10 weeks to get here. If you want to stick with that choice, we'll need to extend this schedule. Otherwise, we can choose a different one that's available sooner. This gives you the flexibility to work with your client while protecting yourself from unreasonable expectations. Example contract language to include. To make sure you're covered, include a contract language like this. In the event of price increases, delays in material shipments, labor shortage, weather-related interruptions, or other unexpected circumstances beyond the contractor's control, homeowner agrees to cover additional expenses and grant an extension of the project schedule as needed. With this clause, you're not just protecting your bottom line, you're also setting clear expectations for the homeowner. They know that if things go wrong, and they often do, it won't come out of your pocket, and the project timeline will reflect the new reality. Key takeaways. Make sure to write in protections for yourself for things that you can't control. If it's not in the contract, you have to honor the terms exactly as they are. Set clear expectations with the homeowner, especially for timelines and costs. Plan for the unexpected. Danny's story is a perfect example of what can happen when you don't plan for the unexpected. He never imagined that a pandemic would cause material prices to skyrocket and labor to become scarce. But when it did, he was left without any protections. Because his contract didn't include a provision for price increases or delays, he had no legal standing to renegotiate the terms or walk away without consequences. Ultimately cost him not just the job, but his entire business. As a contractor, you can't control everything, but you can control how prepared you are. This provision is your lifeline when unexpected things happen, whether it's a global pandemic, a sudden spike in material prices, or just a week of nonstop rain. This clause will keep your project moving forward and your business in the black. Don't let the unexpected catch you off guard. Protect yourself, your business, and your future by including this must-have provision in every contract. What happens if the client wants out of the contract? Be sure to include language around your contract to get paid for damage. That's what we'll cover in the next chapter. Hey guys, thanks.